Hi, I'm Bryce Yoakum with Plant-Wide Integration. Today I'm going to show you how you can use Ignition and YokeDev to have AI build an entire application in Ignition without ever opening the designer. I already started up the VM. They take about 3 to 5 minutes to start. I just didn't want to wait for it, but I will show you how to provision an MCP. So here we're copying our MCP URL. Come in here. I need to hide some of these because some of these are my customers. We're going to make this. We're going to call it Ignition, and we're going to add that and connect. Alright, so normally what you do is you'd come in here, you download your designer for Ignition, and you'd start designing. This computer that I'm working on does not even have the Ignition designer on it. I've never used it on here. If you are doing this, you would want that because you want to be able to see what's happening with the tags and stuff, but in this case, we're just going to do it without it so we can kind of prove how it is. One thing as well is when you're doing an Ignition project, you're going to want to inherit from an existing template. So you have all of your pre-built everything ready to go. In this case, we're going to build it from scratch. That's not typically how we would do it. So the AI might get a little confused on what it's trying to do because it doesn't have that hierarchy. All right. So Claude, we're going to run command line. The reason I do the command line is because there's a lot of provisioning that needs to happen, and it will just keep looping through until it gets taken care of. I have the text really big so that hopefully you guys can see it because I'm on the larger monitor. So one thing I always do is run the MCP command here and make sure we have a connection. So I just reconnect. All right, we're good to go. And then I have a skill for Ignition. This just kind of helps the AI. As we're building applications, we just kind of push information back into here on how to do things. When we have a gotcha, there's something that the AI struggles to figure out. So we're going to build in Perspective. What do you want to build? So let's just try and get a hello world going. All right. So basically it's going to go through this. It's going to say we don't actually have Ignition. I forgot to viewer permission. It might run me through a series of things here to just get everything approved. All right. Normally, I would do secrets as well. So in YokeDev, there are quite a few things in here. So one of the things that you can do is add secrets, which basically just hide these API keys and passwords and stuff from the AI. So a lot of people use the $20 one, or forget to check the little box that says don't train on my data. We don't ever want to train on APIs, and we don't really want to risk that either way. Even if they say they're not going to train on it, we want to try and hide that information for passwords, APIs, anything like that. So basically what this does is inside the MCP, it just redacts all of that. So it'll never push back a password or anything to the AI. You can add a file. So if you have a JSON file or something like that, as for example, Google uses, you can put that in here and it'll push that and do the same redaction on that entire file. So it can use it while it's provisioning machines and stuff, but it won't read it ever. Then we have uploading files. There's a new version of this coming out soon, which will allow you to upload larger files. Right now we're limited to 75 megabytes. Basically Cloudflare, we go through Cloudflare for everything, and that blocks you at anything over 100 megabytes. But we're going to do a different way of doing it that should allow you to do a couple gigs at least. So you can, if you already have a project, you can bring it in YokeDev. Let's see how we're doing. I better leave this up. So let's move this over here so we can keep hitting those when they pop up. Over here, we kind of have our bandwidth. I haven't seen anyone get anywhere close to this. So this is the builder right now. So this is the smallest VM. This is a tiny VM, way too small for what we should be able to run Ignition on. We're going to generate a throwaway because this is just a throwaway account. Normally, like I said, we would add that password up in here. It's basically saying, hey, you should add a password for the gateway in the secrets, so I can't see it. But Yeah, so you can get much bigger VMs, and we can even go bigger than scale. Right now, nobody has needed to go bigger than this one. We have one customer, I believe, that's on the $96 one, and I don't think they're anywhere near using that to full capacity. Everything's built in Linux, so it's all run on Docker, and it's basically an entire environment built just for interacting with AI and applications. So you can do Ignition, you can do Odoo, really anything that is in Docker. You can also build custom apps, and that's what most people have been doing so far, is doing custom apps. But I wanted to show that, hey, you can do more than just custom apps. You can actually do Ignition, a full project, if you really wanted to. If you have something to start with, it would go much quicker, but it should be able to get this going. Now the main. So your AI will probably struggle with this. That skill that I have, that I loaded at the beginning for Ignition, it kind of has all the rules for setting the 8.3 up on a VM, because we do this way for projects. So I can't necessarily release that skill to the public because there's probably some proprietary stuff in there. I've never read it. The AI kind of builds it as it goes and adds to it. You don't have to use Claude. I use Claude because it's my favorite, but you could use ChatGPT, you could use Gemini. It doesn't really matter. And you don't have to use the command line interface, but I would definitely recommend it for the initial setup because of the loop capability here where it can keep going. You could use desktop as well. I am not reading these, so hopefully I'm not doing something I shouldn't, but I can't read and talk at the same time. All right, so there's options for some S3 buckets. So you can do 1 terabyte or 2 terabytes all the way up to 5 terabytes. If you need more, we can do more. You can do daily backups. So basically, this is a running backup that happens every day for 7 straight days. So basically, you could go back 7 days. Highly recommend doing that, especially starting out, just because your AI might do something that it shouldn't and break something. So we try and create an environment where that wouldn't happen. But if you don't really know what you're doing and you're doing what I'm doing right now and not reading what's happening, it can get pretty bad pretty quickly. All right, sounds like it's up. So let's check it out, see if we got a hello world. Oops, it's not the right screen. All right, so we got Ignition running. Again, I don't have Designer, so it did this on its own. Yeah, so basically because I did the thing where I don't want prompts, it's just going through looking at my old transcripts to figure out what prompts it should automatically allow through. I do not recommend just clicking through like this, but you can see, I don't know how long is the video so far. It's 11 minutes. So it took us 10 minutes to install Ignition and get Hello World up and running. Again, it'll probably take you longer on the first one just because you don't have all the rules built into the thing. I'll maybe try and release that at some point so other people can use AI. And you don't have to use YokeDev, but you can use any AI with the skill and be able to do this. It just works really well on Linux, and it basically has a whole bunch of features to help the AI with managing projects. And it also does a lot of nudges, what I call them. So basically, when the server sees that it's trying to do something it shouldn't, or it's struggling with something, it kind of gives hints back to the AI on how to solve those problems. It has a full project management structure. So typically, instead of doing Hello World right away, I would start out by planning out my entire project. You know, what do I want to build? What screens are we going to have? What PLCs are we connecting? I'd load up all the tags. I'd load in any documentation we have. We'd sort through that. We'd plan out the entire application before we even make a single screen. I also like to use the Claude.ai version because it can do React screens. So we can demo screens and kind of move things around. Oh, this is what I want a tank to look like or whatever. If you're using a inherited project as well, and you already have those things, you can load a lot of that into here and get it going just so the AI knows what's happening and what it has available to it. If you have sample projects and things like that as well that you can load in, that helps just kind of teach it what needs to happen. Okay, enough of this. We don't need to go through all of that. Context 7 is also really useful. So if you haven't used Context 7, I highly suggest you try it out. When the AI gets stuck, Context 7, 80% of the time, can help figure it out on what it's trying to do. So now what do we want to do? Let's bar and a sample page with a tank in, oops, my fingers are off by one, inlet valve. Let's do a vent, an outlet, or an outlet pump. So a vent, you got an inlet valve. Let's do an inlet pump as well. And okay, let's just see what it comes up with. So basically now I'm just going to let it run and kind of see what it comes up with. I will say if you don't have a template for it to work off of, it does different things every single time. So that's where having a template that you kind of have and a way to teach it what you want it to do. My ignition skill does have information in it on kind of how I like screens to be built, which helps keep them somewhat standardized. It also has information on how to name tags, how to name tags from screens, how to name tags in the tag browser, and how to name tags from ignition, and how to build SQL or Postgres or whatever databases, and how to name the tables and things like that is all built into the skill. So it's saying this is the house standard. Yeah, so we do grayscale everything. We only want color on things that have alarms or need to draw the operator's attention. So for instance, if we have a valve or let's say a motor, let's say we have a VFD fault and we're not on a page that has that VFD, it should do breadcrumbing that gets you all the way to that VFD. That way we're helping drive the operator to where they need to go, or maintenance, whatever, to solve the problem. So it's talking again about my skill. That's the reference material. There's quite a bit of information in there built over a couple different projects where it can kind of get an idea of what to build. It doesn't have any actual drawings or symbols or anything in it. It just describes what the expectation is for those. But I would highly recommend just making a template. Is it trying? It might be trying to pull. We might have made a reference to the actual template that would normally pull from in the skill. I thought I pulled it out, but I might have missed something. So I think that's what it's trying to look for right now. We'll see what it pulls in. But what I wanted it to do is pull from the default symbols and build this out with those. That was kind of the goal, so that it looks like a demo that you would see from Ignition or something like that. It does take a while. Normally, we would have other things going on while this is running. You can multitask and try and read and keep up with what problems it's having. And then as it has problems, you always want to build in tests or update the skill to kind of solve those problems and get it so it can do it independently. So every one you do gets better and better. I'm not sure what it's trying to do here. You might have to Control O this so I can actually see what it's calling. Yeah, so one thing with Anthropic or Claude is it has really, really strict Cloudflare. The MCP is constantly getting blocked from their Cloudflare with this WAF, especially at night. It gets a lot stricter kind of after that 7, 8 p.m. Central Time. So basically what I normally would do in this situation is I tell the AI to build things in files rather than just sending commands, and to break them up into small chunks. So it tends to block SQL type things and HTML, especially if they're really large. So you want to have it break it into small chunks and then build it into a file and then run the file. And it kind of works its way around it. If you don't tell it that, it will eventually figure that out. Yeah, so it's working. It'll rebuild it once it's done here. But so we're kind of going through this a little bit. I'll just kind of put this here. So once it rebuilds, we can kind of see it. So yeah, it's got daily backups. There is an option for staging. Probably wouldn't work real well with Ignition, but it's meant more for actual applications that you're building. So what staging is basically, it's just another port that's available, and it creates a new URL for you where you can stage the front end. It's still using the same database. It doesn't make a copy of it or anything, but all your code gets duplicated. So basically the whole container is running separately, so you can inspect things, make sure everything's working, nothing's broken. And if you set up your database correctly, where you have sample data that you can work with to actually run tests, and you install Playwright, Playwright is great to install for this type of thing. AI uses Playwright really well. One of the things that YokeDev forces is the AI is forced to make tests. So it has to have tests before it'll allow it to deploy, and it also has to have goals. So it forces it to do project management. One of the things I found with AI is that it just did not do real well with project management. It would forget things over time, and if you switch from one window to another, you lose everything. So the whole idea here is that I could open up 3 of these and run 3 different ones at the same time. There are some advanced features as well, which basically are running multi-agent. So inside of the DevOps, there's a whole bunch of parameters that the AI can turn on or off. And one of them is a multi-agent mode, where you can run multiple agents that each get their own work trees, and they have their own sub-agents that get their own lanes inside of those work trees. And then I also have an agent that is designed for doing PM work. So basically it organizes that backlog. It marks things off that are actually done that got missed, and it picks things depending on what mode you're in. So if you're in single mode like we are right now, it'll try and build out that backlog for a serial style of completion. So it does one task, then moves to the next, moves to the next. If it's in multi-mode, it will take your backlog and split it into groups of between 5 and 10 tasks, and it will try and make those what I call sprints, and it'll try and make them so they don't touch the same files. So you can give that to one of your command line interfaces here and tell it to spawn an agent for each one of them, and it can do all of those tasks at the same time. So you can get through a backlog, of 200 tasks relatively quickly, where before we had AI, that would take months to do, and you could do it in potentially even hours here and have it tested and functioning. So it's pretty crazy how fast you can develop. Did it reload? Still hello world. It is down now. Oh, it says it's working. Maybe it's not on hello world anymore. Once it gets going, things start to get a little smoother. The initial startup is pretty rough. It is actually way worse than what you've seen here. That skill helps a ton, but it says there's a bunch of stuff on screen. We're going to get Playwright going so I can actually see what it's doing. I also have inside the skill an explanation of how it can take screenshots. If you don't have your AI set up to be able to take screenshots of the work you're working on, I would highly suggest you figure out how to do that. It works insanely well at finding the little things that AI is bad at, especially with screen development. And if you do /remote control, do that and pull it up on your phone, you'll be able to see the screenshots, where here it puts them into a folder and you can't obviously display a screenshot on a command line interface. So if you pull that up on your phone, you'll actually be able to see the screenshots that it takes. It loads it right into the chat on your phone. Even though it's the exact same chat as what we're looking at, it actually loads the pictures. It works really well. It's also really nice if you're don't want to constantly be loading the screens. You can kind of see the screens that it's making and approve it or deny it, or say, hey, we need to add this feature or that feature or whatever. So what we really want to do here is, if we already have PLC programs, like this is an existing plant, we take those, we would put them all into L5Xs, and then we would explode those L5Xs with the Rockwell script for that and feed that information into here. And then we would also feed in information with the documents. So we would either use, if it's like a PDF, like a good PDF, we would take that and OCR that so that it can read that all out, pull all the text from it. If it's bad, like if it's a picture or not a great PDF, we would run that through the Claude API, so through Claude platform, and have it pull all that information. Obviously, you have to have permission from the customer in order to do all of this. It's really not any different than storing the documents in the cloud somewhere. Either way, you're trusting that they're going to hold up to their end of their agreement, in which case here we're saying that they won't train off of that information. If you don't have one of the paid for versions, there is no agreement like that. Up here on initializing client, doesn't typically have issues with this. So if you hit escape, it'll kind of stop what it's doing and take care of your request here. You can also do by the way, which will, if you have just a question about something, it'll kind of push it into another chat temporarily without taking any context away from what you're doing. One thing a lot of people spend a lot of time on is context. So managing their memory and their chat and when should they compress it and all of that stuff. I don't really worry about that. YokeDev kind of takes care of that. So one of the things that YokeDev does is it has all the logs for everything in there. So the AI has all the logs. It tracks every MCP command. So the AI can go back and look at what it did in chronological order. And it has all the goals of what it did. And then it ties those into the activities, so the MCP commands. So there's kind of a back and forth there. You can link them together. The AI can figure out what it was working on and what commands it sent, what it was asking from the server essentially, and what the server responded with. So that helps tremendously in troubleshooting and keeping it on task. So if you build out this backlog and you build out the sprints for the AI and kind of work your way through the sprints, then you will eventually end up with a finished project that's pretty good. Things that it will nudge for best practices as well. So the server will push back and say, hey, this file is greater than 500 lines. Please consider splitting it into multiple modules. Just little things like that AI is just not good at doing without explicitly being told. Now, it still might ignore it, for instance, but not always. It's not the gateway. A fresh browser from my machine. Maybe I need to do a hard reset. Look at that. So basically what I did there was Control-Shift-R. I have never had to do that before, but I mean, this turned out fantastic, actually. This is way better than I thought it would be. Did it make, oh my goodness, it even made pop-ups. Yeah, the skill that we have is definitely helping this make better images and stuff as well. So essentially you could take this, wow, it even got the alarm history page. That's not far off from what we would make. All right, I'm impressed. This is better than I was expecting it to do. So basically it's saying, hey, pump the valve to tank. There's a vent on top. And then to go out, we have the drain and the outlet. So now we can take this and, start making changes to it. We could also ask questions. So the structure of, I'm just trying to think of the best way to word that, where it's not going to get confused and give me information about the server itself. So right now it's going to search for this, and maybe we should say tag browse, because I'm not sure if that's detailed enough to figure out what it needs to do. All right, so here's what it built in the background. Obviously, we would want this to build off of the PLC programs. One thing as an integrator you'll find is most PLC programs are pretty horrendous out there. A lot of times these will just be, bit 1 and then some comment. So you can't pull that information. Well, I guess you can now with the latest RS links. I believe you have to pay extra for it. I haven't actually seen anyone use that yet. But what we would normally do is take the program and convert it to an L5X and then push that into here for information as well so that it could automatically generate this information. So hopefully there's an AOI or something, some sort of control module for a pump that has some default tags. But most of the time, that's not the case. Unless it's a relatively new machine or they had some really good programmers that were doing some modern stuff back in the day. This is just not how most projects are. But this looks really good. It has a command run, a fault, which is Boolean. Is there a string? No. Permissive and interlock. The mode. Yeah. It did a really good job. And then an HMI label. So HMI label is going to be whatever's up on there probably. Process, level set point, pressure. Okay. So that's going to be these down here. It's not bad, but it did way better than I thought it would, especially on the first round trip. So the skill has definitely been improved. So as you're doing this, it's super important to improve the skill as you're going through so that it can actually develop these things from scratch. But yeah, so this is it. This is YokeDev and Ignition working together, automatically generating this. There was nothing on this VM before we started. It was completely empty. You saw it install Ignition at the beginning. It put Ignition on there. It put Playwright on there. I actually didn't even know it could do icons in here like this. This demo went way quicker than I expected, but it went really good. I'm very happy. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. Bryce Yoakum with Plant-Wide Integration, happy to help. Also, we can talk about how we can use AI with your actual data and not just generate ignition. Thank you.